look at a traditional map of global music dominance from, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, it would look pretty lopsided.
Oh, entirely. You'd have like a massive thumbtack stuck in London, another one in New York, maybe Los Angeles.
Right, and Berlin if we're talking electronic music specifically.
Exactly. Culturally, at least in terms of industry power and where the actual money flowed, the rest of the world was basically treated as the periphery.
It was like one of those antique maps where half the world is just blank space with the words, "Here be dragons," scribbled in the margins.
That is a great way to put it. Those outer places where the music might be seen as exotic or maybe inspiring for Western artists to sample.
Yeah, a place to pull flavor from, but definitely not where the actual throne was seated.
Never the throne. The infrastructure of the global music industry historically demanded that artists travel to those specific centers to be considered legitimate.
It's a very centralized, incredibly rigid way of viewing art. The culture was always expected to flow outward from those hubs, never the other way around.
Which is why today's deep dive is so vital. We are looking at the exact moment that old lopsided map basically caught fire.
We've got a really fascinating piece of source material on the table today. It is incredibly concise, punchy, heavily exclamation pointed, actually.
It reads practically like a telegram.
It really does. It's a short excerpt from a 2026 release by 786Muzik LLC titled AfroHouse Story EO2 Black Coffee.
Just a few bold lines, but the density of what it's actually communicating is enormous. I mean, it's an outline of a cultural earthquake.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to figure out how this single artist's trajectory serves as an absolute masterclass in how a localized music genre becomes an undeniable global phenomenon.
Right, because the notes describe the subject, Black Coffee, as a global superstar with an exclamation point.
Yeah, and we need to look at the exact evidence the text provides to back up that massive claim. Because it doesn't just throw that phrase out into the void.
No, it anchors it immediately.
Exactly. It anchors it with 3 very specific milestones.
Ibiza.
Coachella. Grammy.
3 single words. But, they carry the weight of 3 entirely different universes within the music industry.
To truly understand a claim as massive as global superstar, you really have to look at the architectural pillars supporting it.
Conquering just one of these is considered the absolute peak of a career for most artists. What's fascinating here is the sheer friction between those 3 worlds.
They usually contradict each other, right?
Completely. The audiences, the expectations, the sonic rules, they are miles apart.
I was thinking about this, and the best way I can conceptualize what the text is doing here is to look at it like a musical Triple Crown.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Because in horse racing, winning the Triple Crown is legendary because the 3 races are run on completely different tracks at different distances, requiring entirely different types of stamina.
Right, a horse that wins the Kentucky Derby often doesn't have the endurance for the Belmont Stakes.
Exactly. So conquering Ibiza, Coachella, and the Grammys is like winning the ultimate cultural Triple Crown. These aren't just random high-paying gigs.
No, they are highly specific proving grounds. Let's look at the first one. Ibiza.
A wide aisle.
Right. To a casual observer, it's just a massive party destination in Spain. But in the context of electronic music, it is the crucible.
It's the proving ground of the underground.
Exactly. Historically, Ibiza has been dominated by European techno and house. We are talking about a very specific sonic profile.
A relentless mechanical 4-on-the-floor beat, usually.
Yeah, clocking in around 125 to 130 beats per minute. And the people on those dance floors at 5 in the morning, they do not care about your marketing budget.
Or your social media followers.
Not at all. They care about the sonic journey. Ibiza is where you prove you have absolute, undeniable credibility to the purists.
If you don't speak the deepest, most authentic language of dance music, Ibiza will chew you up and spit you out. It is ruthless.
It really is. And then you have Black Coffee walking into that specific environment. But he isn't playing that standard, aggressive Berlin techno.
Right, he is bringing Afro House.
Which fundamentally changes the physics of the room. I mean, Afro-House typically sits at a slightly slower tempo, maybe 118 to 122 beats per minute.
It's a very different groove.
Completely different. It relies heavily on complex, syncopated African polyrhythms rather than just a driving kick drum.
And it incorporates ancestral chants, soulful vocals, live instrumentation like shakers and congas mixed with deep rolling bass lines.
Right, it's a warmer, more spiritual sound. So to take that specific sonic profile into the mechanical heart of Ibiza and completely command the island,
It's unheard of.
it requires a level of technical prowess and groove that absolutely forces the purists to respect you.
But then the text points to the second milestone, which is Coachella. And this is the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Oh, totally.
Coachella is daytime, it's spectacle, it's influencers in the Indio desert, it's brand deals. It is the mainstream American zeitgeist.
The audience at Coachella is largely there for the cultural moment. They want anthems, you know. They want to be entertained on a colossal scale.
And they have, what, a 45-minute attention span before they wander off to the next stage.
Exactly. The skill required to hold the attention of tens of thousands of people in a desert, many of whom might not even know your genre, is entirely different from keeping a dark, intimate club moving until sunrise.
It's a totally different muscle.
Yeah.
The club kids in Ibiza usually actively reject the massive mainstream spectacle of Coachella.
They view it as a sellout crowd.
Right. And the Coachella crowds often don't have the patience for a slow-building, 3-hour underground club set where the beat barely changes for the first 20 minutes.
So to conquer both means you have somehow found a frequency that resonates with the underground purist and the pop culture consumer.
You figured out how to scale a deeply soulful rhythmic sound so it fills a massive festival tent without losing its authenticity.
Which brings us to the third word in the document, Grammy.
The highest tier of industry critical acclaim. The absolute establishment.
Right, the Recording Academy is where you are judged not by the sweaty club goer and not by the festival influencer, but by your peers.
The musicians, the producers, the executive.
The Grammys represent institutional validation. They look at the technical mastery, the composition, the cultural impact on the industry itself.
And historically, the best dance electronic album category has been heavily biased toward Western pop dance.
Oh, without a doubt. Think Daft Punk, Skrillex, the Chemical Brothers.
Institutional awards historically lag way behind what's actually happening in the underground. The establishment usually completely ignores what's happening in places like South Africa.
Or even Ibiza, honestly.
Right, until it becomes so commercially massive that it's just impossible to ignore. So to hold a Grammy in one hand while commanding the stages of Coachella and Ibiza with the other,
It's almost contradictory.
it is.
But it proves a universally translatable appeal that defies every traditional boundary. That's why the 786Muzik excerpt emphasizes these three specific milestones.
It's the ultimate proof of concept.
The source is arguing that this isn't just fame. You aren't just a star in one room. You own every single room in the house.
The underground respects your roots, the mainstream consumes your spectacle, and the institution bows to your mastery.
Exactly.
And that triple crown naturally leads into the source's next major, heavily exclamation-pointed assertion.
The global claim.
Right, that this rise showed electronic music is global. The milestones were the undeniable proof, and this is the grand conclusion. But wait, hold on.
So,
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because I need to unpack this word global. I have a bit of a logical issue with it.
okay, let's hear it.
Well, synthesizers, drum machines, doo-wop like Ableton, these are universal tools, right?
Absolutely.
A kid producing beats in a bedroom in Sao Paulo or Tokyo has access to the exact same software as a kid in Berlin or Chicago.
That's true.
Electronic music, by its very nature, relies on technology that doesn't have a passport. The sound waves themselves are borderless.
Right.
So wasn't this genre already inherently global? Why does this specific text claim Black Coffee's rise is what showed it to be global?
Okay. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to the critical difference between geography and cultural capital.
Okay, go on.
You're absolutely right that the tools of electronic music were everywhere. The consumption of electronic music was global, but the authority within electronic music,
The center of gravity.
yes, the center of gravity, that was fiercely protected and highly localized.
Going back to that lopsided map we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Exactly. For decades, the narrative of electronic music was a fundamentally Northern Hemisphere story.
It was born in the marginalized Black and Latino communities of Chicago and Detroit, right?
Yes, and then exported to Europe, where places like Berlin, London, and Amsterdam basically industrialized it.
They formalized it and claimed the global throne.
They built the mega clubs, they launched the massive record labels, they controlled the festival circuits.
So if you were a producer anywhere else in the world, say South Africa,
Yeah.
The unwritten rule was that you had to assimilate.
You had to assimilate to the European or American sound to be taken seriously on the world stage.
You could participate, but you had to play by their sonic rules.
You were importing their culture, putting your little localized spin on it, but ultimately bowing to their center of gravity.
You wanted a booking in London, you better sound like London.
You were essentially a guest in their house. What the text is asserting here is that the Black Coffee trajectory shattered that dynamic.
Because he didn't achieve the Triple Crown by playing standard Berlin techno or Chicago house.
No, he achieved it with AfroHouse, a uniquely rooted, geographically distinct sound from the African continent.
He didn't dilute the ancestral rhythms or the localized vocal styles to make it more palatable for a European ear.
He didn't travel to the center. He forced the center to shift to him.
That is so powerful.
His success showcased that the cultural center of electronic music isn't restricted to the West.
He proved that a sound deeply rooted in a specific non-Western cultural context could be exported outward and dominate the entire globe.
Without losing its essence. He showed that electronic music isn't just a global export of the West. It is a universal language where anyone, from anywhere, can dictate the global conversation.
The world had to learn the groove of AfroHouse, rather than AfroHouse having to learn the groove of the world.
Exactly. That completely redefines the word global.
It shifts it from meaning sold everywhere to meaning can originate from anywhere. That is a massive distinction.
It really is.
But, proving you're a global superstar is just an individual victory. The real question is, does the culture follow you through the door? Or does the door shut behind you?
Which brings us directly to the source's final and maybe most important revelation.
Right. The text says he opened doors for movement. So what does this all mean?
It's a statement of profound consequence for the industry's infrastructure.
I really want to focus on that word movement. Because the text doesn't just say he opened doors for a few other artists or for his friends or even just for a specific sound.
It says movement.
And we have to contextualize this with the title of the document itself. AfroHouse Story Episode 2.
This raises an important question about how the industry actually works. We talk about opening doors as a cliche in pop culture, but in the reality of the music industry, those doors are incredibly heavy.
They are locked tight by systemic biases,
by rigid genre definitions, and by decades of geographical gatekeeping. The industry loves the status quo because the status quo is profitable and predictable.
A record label knows exactly how to market a standard pop house track.
A festival promoter knows exactly where to put a techno DJ on the lineup.
But when a new sound comes along, it breaks all their algorithms.
It creates friction. A&R reps don't know what budget to assign it. Spotify playlist curators don't have a specific genre tag for it.
Booking agents don't know if the crowd will actually dance to it.
Breaking through that resistance takes an immense, almost unreasonable amount of energy.
Think of it less like breaking down a physical door and more like laying down train tracks through a jungle.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to picture it.
The pioneer has to hack through the brush, deal with the legal red tape of the industry, convince the investors, and build the physical rails.
They take all the financial and cultural risk.
When Black Coffee played Ibiza initially, he had to face the skepticism of promoters who had literally never booked that specific rhythm pattern before.
When he went to Coachella, he had to prove to the booking agents that this sound could hold a mainstream crowd so they wouldn't lose money.
And when he won the Grammys, he had to force an entire legacy institution to recognize a completely new paradigm of excellence.
He absorbed all the friction of the new. He laid the tracks. And here are the mechanics of a movement. Once that track is laid...
Once the Coachella booking agents have an Afro-House category in their Rolodex...
Exactly. Once Spotify creates massive flagship playlists dedicated purely to the genre, once the Grammy voters understand the sonic criteria for the music, the heavy lifting is done.
The infrastructure exists.
By achieving that Triple Crown, he didn't just build a comfortable room for himself. He built a highway so that an entire ecosystem could ride straight to the main stage.
The next generation of Afro-House artists, the producers in Pretoria, the DJs in Luanda, the vocalists across the continent, they don't have to waste their energy proving to an Ibiza promoter that an African electronic sound is viable.
That argument has already been won. They just have to prove that their specific track is undeniably good.
They get to start the race halfway down the track.
That is why this document from 786Muzik is specifically labeled Episode 2.
Ah, right.
If we look at the timeline of any cultural movement, Episode 1 is the origin. It's the underground bubbling up in the townships, the localized creation of the sound.
It's the incubation period where the community's just making music for themselves, establishing the rules of the genre.
Episode 2, this text we have in front of us, is the breach.
It is the moment the pioneer builds the infrastructure, achieves the Triple Crown, and proves the global commercial viability to the gatekeepers.
Which means episode 3
is the flood.
It's the transition of Afro-House from a niche, localized community to a globally recognized dominant force, the movement utilizing the infrastructure.
It stops being categorized as world music in the dusty corner of a record store bin and becomes simply the music of the world.
It fundamentally alters the DNA of pop culture. When a movement scales that infrastructure, it starts collaborating with mega pop stars. It starts influencing high fashion runways.
It dictates the rhythm of the global summer. The pioneer takes the hits and lays the tracks so the movement can take the territory.
It is incredible how much narrative and cultural physics is packed into just a few clipped sentences from this source.
We are looking at the exact anatomy of a cultural shift.
Truly.
I mean, we started with what looked like a really brief set of notes.
Our telegram, basically.
Yeah, and we explored how those specific milestones, conquering the deep purists in Ibiza, scaling the sound for the mainstream at Coachella, and forcing institutional validation at the Grammys, how they all served as the undeniable proof of a global superstar status.
We dug into how that massive achievement didn't just elevate one man, but actually proved the truly borderless nature of electronic music.
Shifting the cultural center of gravity away from the traditional European and American strongholds.
The music forced the world to learn a new rhythm.
And finally, we looked at the literal mechanics of a pioneer, how his individual success laid the heavy industrial tracks, allowing an entire Afro-House movement to surge onto the global stage without having to fight the same battles.
It's a blueprint.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
For you listening, I want you to think about this the next time you turn on a curated playlist or look at a massive festival lineup.
Yeah, pay attention to the names.
Whenever you encounter a massive new cultural wave, or you hear a sound from halfway across the globe suddenly dominating the charts in your own city, remember that it didn't just float there on the breeze.
It didn't happen by accident.
There is always a pioneer. Someone had to hack through the jungle and lay the tracks first.
And as we consider the landscape now that the infrastructure for the Afro-House movement is fully built and the sound is firmly seated on the global stage, it leaves us with something crucial to consider.
What's that?
Well, now what? When a localized, deeply spiritual movement finally scales those tracks to become the dominant global sound, does it end up changing the world? Or does the world, with its massive commercial pressures and pop culture demands, end up changing the movement?